Purkinje Effect. Who discovered the Purkinje Effect? John Evangelista Purkinje, pioneer Czech experimental physiologist whose investigations in the fields of histology, embryology, and pharmacology helped create a modern understanding of the eye and vision, brain and heart functions, and mammalian reproductions and the compositions of cells. In 1813, he began his medical studies, which culminated with his dissertation's contributions to the understanding of vision from the subjective point of view. During his investigations into the physiologies of vision, he had studied the phenomenon of color, perception at low levels of light. At dusk, blue light, which has a short wavelength, seems to be brighter than red light, which has a longer wavelength. Today, this phenomenon is called the Purkinje Effect or Purkinje shift.
Purkinje Effect, or sometimes called the Purkinje shift, is the tendency for the peak sensitivity of the human eye to shift toward the blue end of the color spectrum at low illumination levels. This effect introduces a difference in color contrast under different levels of illumination. For instance, in bright sunlight, geranium flowers appear bright red against the dull green of their leaves. But in the same scene viewed at dusk, the contrast is reversed, with the petals appearing a dull red against paler green leaves. The Purkinje effect takes place during the transition period in the day, just when the rods of the eyes take over from the cones during the last dusk. Many people experience this effect. This transition stage is known as the mesopic stage.
Since they already discussed about who discovered the Purkinje effect, which is John Evangelista Purkinje, as they have mentioned earlier, and about what is the Purkinje effect, now I will talk about what causes the Purkinje effect. So, the effect occurs because in mesopic conditions, the outputs of cones in the retina, which are generally responsible for the perception of color in daylight, are pulled with outputs of rods that are more sensitive under those conditions and have peak sensitivity in blue-green wavelength. So the effect occurs because the color-sensitive cones in the retina are most sensitive to yellow light, whereas the rods, which are more light-sensitive and thus more important at dusk, but which do not distinguish colors, responds best to green-blue light.
This is why we become virtually colorblind under low levels of illumination. For instance, midnight. In daylight, human vision is mediated by 6 million cones, receptors of the retina, but at night it is mediated by 125 million rods, where cones are used for color vision and for sharpness of vision. As for the rods, it is specialized for the dim light and movement detection vision. Cones and rods absorb light from slightly different regions of the visible spectrum. The portion of the electromagnetic spectrum is called visible spectrum, which is visible to the human eye. Cones absorb more effectively in the yellows to orange spectrum regions, compared to rods, which absorbs blue-green wavelengths maximally. Thus, a day vision shifts to night. Reds and yellows become relatively darker, and blues and greens relatively brighter in appearance.